Welcome back to Zcoin. Today we're counting down the top 7 most valuable Abraham Lincoln penny coins that could make you a millionaire. Yes, you heard that right. Some of these little copper coins are worth hundreds of thousands and even over $1 million in today's market. So grab your magnifying glass, check your change jar, and let's dive into the list. We're talking about a coin you may have seen hundreds of times but never truly looked at closely. It's the 1963 D. Lincoln 1-cent penny. While many people may think of it as just another old penny, you might be surprised to learn how much value this little copper coin could hold. If you've got one lying around, you'll want to watch this video all the way through, because we're going to explore its origin, historical significance, minting details, potential value today, and what to look for that could turn an ordinary penny into a small fortune. Let's get started with a bit of history. The Lincoln Cent series began back in 1909 to commemorate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. It was the first circulating United States coin to feature a real historical person. Before that, all U.S. coins only had symbolic representations like Lady Liberty or the Indian head. President Theodore Roosevelt had a vision of beautifying American coinage and saw Lincoln as the perfect symbol of unity, integrity, and strength. Victor David Brenner was the designer behind the original 1909 Lincoln wheat cent, and his design endured for 5 decades before the reverse changed in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. That new reverse design featured the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., replacing the earlier wheat stalks. So by 1963, we were in the 4th year of the memorial cent design. Now let's talk about the 1963 D penny specifically. That little D mint mark beneath the date stands for the Denver Mint, one of the major mints in the United States responsible for producing circulating coins. In 1963, the Denver Mint struck an incredible number of Lincoln cents. Over 1 billion coins. To be exact, the mintage for the 1963 D penny was approximately 1,755,050 million. That's a lot of pennies, which is why most 1963 D pennies in circulated condition are still only worth face value or maybe a couple of cents more if they're in really good shape. But here's where things start to get interesting. While the vast majority of 1963 D Lincoln pennies are common and not worth more than their copper content, there are exceptions. Coin collectors, also known as numismatists, place a premium on pennies in exceptionally high condition, known as mint state. The higher the grade, the more valuable the coin becomes. Mint state coins are those that have never been circulated. They have no wear and retain their original luster from the mint. Coin grading is typically done by third-party grading companies such as PCGS or NGC. The grading scale ranges from 1 to 70. Coins graded MS 60 and above are considered mint state. A 1963 D penny graded MS 65 or higher can fetch significantly more than face value, often ranging from $10 to $20. In MS 66, the value jumps even higher, sometimes up to $50 or more. But that's not all. There are even rare cases of 1963 D Lincoln cents that have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, and this happens when a coin is not only in pristine condition but also displays some sort of unique error or variety. That leads us into the fascinating world of coin errors. Collectors go wild for errors because they are rare and often one of a kind. Some of the most valuable error types on a 1963 D penny include double dies, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, and die cracks. Let's break those down. A double die is when the coin design is impressed twice onto the die at a slightly different angle, creating a visible doubling of numbers or letters. If you find a 1963 D penny with noticeable doubling on the date or lettering, hold on to it. These can be worth hundreds. A repunched mint mark is when the D mint mark was struck more than once and in slightly different positions. These varieties are also sought after. Off-center strikes, where the coin is not aligned correctly during minting and part of the design is missing, can also add significant value. A dramatic off-center strike could sell for $50 to $100 or more depending on the percentage of misalignment. Die cracks or die breaks are imperfections in the die that show up as raised lines or blobs on the coin. These are less valuable than the other errors but still collectible. Copper value also plays a role in determining worth. Pennies minted before 1982, including the 1963 D penny, are made of 95% copper. As of now, the melt value of the copper in a single pre-1982 penny is over 2 cents. That means even the most worn-out 1963 D penny is technically worth more than its face value just because of the metal it contains. However, melting pennies for their copper content is illegal in the US, so their real value is best appreciated by collectors or investors holding large quantities. Now, let's talk about real-world prices. In recent auctions, some pristine examples of the 1963 D Lincoln cent graded MS-67 red have sold for over $1,000. Yes, one single penny. The key here is the red designation. Over time, copper coins darken and develop brown tones. A red designation means the coin has retained at least 95% of its original reddish color, which is rare for a 60-year-old coin. So if you've got some old rolls of pennies or inherited a coin collection, definitely check those 1963 D cents for bright red color and flawless surfaces. And what about proof coins? You might be wondering if there's a 1963 D proof penny. The answer is no. Proof coins in 1963 were only made at the Philadelphia Mint, and they do not carry a mint mark. So any 1963 D coin you see is a regular business strike meant for circulation. Still, a regular business strike in high grade is where the value is .so. To summarize, the 1963 D Lincoln 1-cent penny is mostly common, but it can be worth a lot more under the right conditions. Coins in high mint state condition, especially those graded MS-66 or MS-67 red, can be worth $50 to $1,000 or more. Error coins, especially double dies and off-center strikes, are also in demand, and the copper content gives every coin a base value above 1 cent. The key to unlocking a coin's potential is condition, rarity, and uniqueness. So go check your piggy banks, jars of change, and inherited coin boxes. You never know what's hiding in plain sight. That 1963 D penny you thought was just old pocket change might actually be a hidden gem. Today we are diving deep into the fascinating history of the 1967 Lincoln penny, its design background, its place in American numismatic history, and of course how much it could be worth today in the coin market. Stick around because you do not want to miss the details that could turn an old coin in your drawer into serious cash. Let's start with a bit of history. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real person, and that person was none other than the beloved 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln himself. The obverse or front side of the coin features a portrait of Lincoln designed by Victor David Brenner. This design has remained largely unchanged for over a century, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in American history. Now fast forward to 1967, the United States was going through a transitional period in coin production. The Coinage Act of 1965 had eliminated silver from circulating dimes and quarters, and in 1965 through 1967 coins were struck without mint marks as a way to discourage coin hoarding. This means that if you have a 1967 penny, it will not have a mint mark, even if it was struck at the Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco Mint. All 1967 Lincoln cents were made without any mint mark. More than 3 billion 1967 pennies were minted. That's billion with a B. So on the surface, it seems like this would make them pretty common and not very valuable, but as every collector knows, there are always exceptions. So what makes some 1967 Lincoln pennies worth so much money? Let's talk about errors. One of the biggest factors that drive up a coin's value is minting errors. These are mistakes that happen during the coin production process, and in some cases they create coins that are extremely rare. Some error examples in 1967 Lincoln cents include double die obverse, which is when the front of the coin shows signs of doubling, usually on the date or the word liberty or in the motto "In God We Trust." These can be very valuable depending on how strong the doubling is and how well the coin is preserved. Another rare error is off-center strikes. This happens when the coin is not properly aligned during minting, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted off-center. 1967 pennies, especially those with 50% or more of the design off-center and with the date still visible, can fetch impressive prices. There are also clipped planchets, which are coins that were cut incorrectly, leaving a curved or straight edge missing from the coin. These are quite collectible when found in good condition. And then there is the famous BIE error. This refers to a die break that occurs between the letters B and E in the word liberty. On the obverse side, it creates what looks like the letter I between the B and E, hence the nickname BIE error. These are small but sought after by collectors and can increase the coin's value significantly. Now, Let's get into the good stuff. What are 1967 Lincoln pennies actually worth today? Well, the value depends on a few key things. Condition is one of the most important. A 1967 penny in average circulated condition is usually worth around 1 to 5 cents, not much more than face value. However, uncirculated examples, those that have never been used in everyday transactions and still look brand new, can sell for more. A red, uncirculated 1967 penny graded MS65 or higher can sell for around $5 to $10 and sometimes more if it's pristine. If the coin has a well-documented error like the double die or is off-center or clipped, it can be worth anywhere from $20 to several $100s or more depending on the rarity and severity of the error. In rare cases, collectors have paid upwards of $1,000 for an extraordinary error or a near-perfect specimen. So how can you tell if your 1967 penny is valuable? Start by looking closely at the coin under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. Check the date and look for signs of doubling or other anomalies. Look at the edges and make sure the coin is round and fully struck. Check the word Liberty and In God We Trust for signs of the BIE error or die breaks. If you notice anything unusual, you may have a valuable coin on your hands. If you think you found something rare, it's a good idea to get the coin graded by a professional service like PCGS or NGC. This will give you an official assessment of the coin's condition and authenticity and can boost its value if you decide to sell. You can also compare your coin to photos online or visit coin collecting forums and communities to get opinions from experienced collectors. There are even mobile apps that can help you identify coin types and errors using your phone camera. Now, a word of caution: just because a coin is old doesn't mean it's rare or valuable. Remember, over 3 billion 1967 pennies were made, and most of them are still worth only face value. However, finding that one special coin with a rare error or in stunning condition is like finding a hidden gem in plain sight. Let's do a quick recap. The 1967 Lincoln penny features the classic Lincoln design without a mint mark. It was made during a transitional period in U.S. coinage, and while most of them are common, a small number have valuable errors like double dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and BIE die breaks. Uncirculated red specimens and rare errors can fetch anywhere from a few dollars to over $1,000 in today's market. So the next time you get change back at the store or dig through a jar of old coins, don't overlook the humble 1967 penny. Take a closer look, because it just might be a valuable piece of American history hiding in your pocket. Today we are diving deep into the story of one very specific coin. That's right, we're talking about the 1971 D. Lincoln 1-cent penny. At first glance, it might seem like just another ordinary coin, but as you're about to find out, this small piece of copper could actually be worth much more than 1 cent. In fact, under the right circumstances, it can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. So grab your coins and let's take a journey through history, minting, errors, and value to discover why this little coin is attracting attention from collectors and investors alike. Let's start with some background. The 1971 D penny was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the United States Mint's main production facilities. The D mint mark stands for Denver and can be found just under the year on the obverse or heads side of the coin. In 1971, the Denver Mint produced an astonishing number of pennies. Over 2.9 billion were made that year. That's billion with a B. Because of this high mintage number, most 1971 D pennies are extremely common. In circulated condition, they are typically only worth face value. That's 1 cent. But as we always say in the world of coin collecting, rarity is only part of the equation. Condition, errors, and demand all play a role in determining the value of a coin. Now let's talk about the design. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure. The obverse was designed by Victor David Brenner and features the right-facing bust of Abraham Lincoln. The reverse of the coin in 1971 still featured the Lincoln Memorial, a design created by Frank Gasparo. It would remain on the coin until 2008, when it was replaced by a series of different designs in 2009, and then by the Union Shield in 2010. But back in 1971, the Lincoln Memorial reverse was standard and instantly recognizable. Now let's get into the exciting part. How can a coin that was produced by the billions possibly be worth more than 1 cent today? The answer lies in condition and errors. First up, condition. If you happen to have a 1971 D penny in uncirculated or mint state condition, especially if it has a high grade from a professional coin grading service like PCGS or NGC, then you could be holding something of value. Mint state coins are those that show no signs of wear and retain their original mint luster. On the Sheldon scale, which grades coins from 1 to 70, coins that grade MS65 or higher are considered premium quality. A 1971 D penny graded MS67 or MS68 can sell for hundreds of dollars. One example sold for over $600 at auction. The reason these coins are worth so much is because they are hard to find in such perfect condition. Remember, these coins were mass-produced for circulation, so most of them were used, worn down, and damaged. Finding one in pristine condition is like finding a needle in a haystack. Now let's talk about errors. Error coins are some of the most exciting finds in the coin world. These are coins that left the mint with mistakes that can range from minor to dramatic. Some of the most valuable 1971 D pennies are those with striking or die errors. For example, you might find a 1971 D penny with a double die obverse. This means that during the minting process the coin was struck twice with a misalignment, causing a doubling of the features on the front of the coin. This can often be seen on the lettering, the date, or Lincoln's eye. Double die errors can be subtle or very dramatic, and collectors love them. Another possible error is an off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not properly centered in the press and the resulting coin has part of the design missing or off to one side. Off-center coins can vary in value depending on how dramatic the error is. Then there are clipped planchets, die cracks, and even transitional errors that make some coins even more unique. It's also worth noting that some 1971 D pennies were struck on the wrong metal composition. While most 1971 D pennies are made of a copper alloy with 95% copper and 5% zinc, there have been rare cases where coins were struck on leftover planchets from previous years or with experimental metals. These are incredibly rare and require authentication by a professional, so what should you do if you think you have a valuable 1971 D penny? First, don't clean it. Cleaning a coin can lower its value significantly. Next, examine it closely. Look for any doubling, mint errors, or unusual features. If it looks promising, consider sending it to a professional coin grading service. Having your coin graded and authenticated can increase its value and make it easier to sell. Let's talk about current market value. As of now, in 2025, the typical 1971 D penny in circulated condition is still only worth about 1 cent. However, if you have a high-grade uncirculated coin, values can range from $5 to several $100s depending on the condition. A certified MS67 red 1971 D penny can fetch over $500. And error coins, depending on their rarity and type, can range from $50 to several $1,000s in rare cases. Keep in mind that coin values fluctuate based on market demand, metal prices, and the overall economy, so always check recent auction results and market guides. To wrap it up, the 1971 D Lincoln penny is a fascinating coin with a rich history and a surprising potential for value. While most of them are still only worth a cent, rare examples in pristine condition or with unique mint errors can be worth a lot more. So the next time you find some old pennies in your drawer or get change at the store, take a closer look. You might be holding a small treasure in your hand. Where we dive deep into coin collecting, numismatic history, and rare coins that could be sitting right in your pocket change. In today's episode, we are going to take a close look at the 1977 D Lincoln 1-cent penny. Yes, that old copper coin minted more than 4 decades ago might be worth far more than just 1 cent. If you've ever wondered whether a simple penny could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, you'll want to stick around for this entire video. Let's begin with a bit of background. The Lincoln cent has been a staple of American currency since 1909. Originally introduced to commemorate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln, the coin has gone through several changes over the years. From its original wheat reverse to the modern Lincoln Memorial design, these pennies hold a special place in American history. Now, the coin we're focusing on today is the 1977 D penny. The D stands for Denver, the mint where this coin was produced. In that year, the Denver Mint struck over 4.2 billion Lincoln cents. That's right, billions with a B. So, on the surface, you might think that a coin minted in such high numbers would be practically worthless. But like many things in the world of numismatics, it's not just about how many were made. It's about condition, rarity, and sometimes even mistakes. Let's talk about the design for a moment. On the obverse of the coin, we have the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln, facing right. The word liberty is on the left of the coin, the year 1977 is on the right, and above his head, the words "In God We Trust" curve around the rim. On the reverse, we see the Lincoln Memorial, flanked by the words United States of America and the denomination 1 cent. Between the columns of the memorial, if you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln himself. Now, when we start talking about value, the first factor is condition. In average circulated condition, a 1977 D penny is usually only worth face value, just 1 cent. But here's where things start to get interesting. In uncirculated condition, especially those graded MS65 and higher, the value can start to climb significantly. A mint state 65 1977 D penny can be worth anywhere from $5 to $15 depending on market demand. But that's not where the story ends. Some specimens have sold for much more due to their exceptional strike quality, lack of wear, or even more excitingly, due to mint errors. Now let's talk about errors, which are the real stars when it comes to turning a 1-cent coin into a 4-digit treasure. Error coins occur when something goes wrong during the minting process. With the 1977 D penny, collectors have reported a number of error types, including double dies, off-center strikes, and clipped planchets. One of the most valuable types is the double die obverse. This occurs when the die used to stamp the coin shifts slightly between strikes, creating a noticeable doubling of features like the date or lettering. While double dies from 1977 D are not as famous as those from other years like 1955 or 1969s, rare examples do exist and can fetch a hefty sum if verified and authenticated by professional graders. Another thing that makes a huge difference in value is the coin's color. Lincoln cents can be categorized as red, red-brown, or brown depending on how the copper has aged. A fully red, mint state coin is considered the most desirable. These are coins that have been well preserved with their original luster intact. If you have a red 1977 D penny in mint state condition, it could be worth significantly more than a brown one, even with the same numerical grade. Now let's get to some numbers. According to the latest auction records and coin price guides, a top-graded 1977 D Lincoln penny, we're talking MS67 or better, has sold for upwards of $1,000. In one notable auction, a superb red example of the 1977 D penny graded MS67 Plus by PCGS sold for over $2,000. That's 200,000 times its face value. Of course, such coins are extremely rare and usually come from rolls that were never circulated. If you want to know whether your 1977 D penny might be valuable, your best bet is to look at its condition first. Use a magnifying glass and examine the coin for luster, scratches, nicks, and signs of wear. If it appears nearly perfect, you might want to consider having it professionally graded by a company like PCGS or NGC. So what should you do if you find a 1977 D penny in your pocket change or coin jar? First, don't dismiss it as worthless. Give it a close inspection. Look at the date and mint mark, examine the overall appearance, and check for anything unusual like doubling or off-center designs. If it stands out, you might have a rare piece on your hands. Let's also talk about market trends. Over the past 5 years, the interest in vintage coins has grown steadily, driven by both collectors and investors. Even though billions of these pennies were made, high-grade examples are becoming harder to find because many have been lost, worn down, or destroyed. As demand increases and supply shrinks, values tend to rise, especially for coins in pristine condition. In conclusion, while the average 1977 D penny may not be worth more than a cent, the exceptional ones, those rare mint state coins, those with errors, or those with brilliant original luster, can be worth a small fortune. Whether you're a seasoned collector or a casual enthusiast, it's worth taking the time to check your change. You never know what treasures you might discover hiding in plain sight. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most interesting and surprising coins you might just have lying around in your pocket change or coin jar. I am talking about the 1982 D Lincoln 1-cent coin. At first glance, it looks like any regular penny, but as we'll explore today, this coin has a unique backstory that has made some versions of it incredibly valuable. In fact, some 1982 D pennies have sold for thousands of dollars, and I'm going to explain exactly why, so make sure to watch the whole video, because you might be sitting on a small fortune without even knowing it. Let's start with the basics. In 1982, something major happened in the world of United States coinage. That year, the U.S. Mint made a critical change to the composition of the 1-cent coin. Before 1982, all Lincoln cents were made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, but due to the rising cost of copper, the Mint decided to switch to a cheaper composition. Starting in the middle of 1982, they began producing pennies made primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating. The new composition was 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This change was a big deal, and the transition wasn't instantaneous. In fact, both copper and zinc pennies were made during that same year. Not only that, but there were multiple varieties of the 1982 Lincoln cent. There were large dates and small dates. There were copper versions and zinc versions. There were coins minted in Philadelphia and coins minted in Denver. So in total, there are 7 distinct varieties of the 1982 penny. Let's list them quickly. Number 1, 1982 large date copper. Number 2, 1982 small date copper. Number 3, 1982 large date zinc. Number 4, 1982 small date zinc. Number 5, 1982 D large date copper. Number 6, 1982 D large date zinc. And number 7, the holy grail of the bunch, the 1982 D small date copper. Now here's where things get exciting. The 1982 D small date copper variety was not supposed to exist. You see, all small date 1982 D pennies were believed to be made only in the new zinc composition, but in 2016, a coin collector discovered a 1982 D penny with a small date style that was made of copper, not zinc. This coin should not have existed, but it did, and that's what makes it extremely rare and valuable. This unexpected variety is believed to be a mint error or a transitional error, meaning it was made during the switch from copper to zinc, and somehow the wrong metal planchet was used. To put it simply, a few 1982 D pennies were struck with the small date design on copper planchets, which was not intended by the mint. So far, only a few of these rare coins have been found and verified. Each time one comes to market, collectors go crazy for it. One such coin sold at auction for over $18,000. Yes, you heard that right, over $18,000 for a penny. So how do you know if you have the rare one? First, you need to check the date and mint mark. Look for a 1982 penny with a D under the date. That means it was minted in Denver. Then you need to determine if it is a small date or a large date. That can be tricky, but there are visual guides online and on coin websites that show the difference. Generally, the small date has a more delicate, thinner look to the numbers, especially the number 2. The top of the number 8 in the small date version is more level with the rest of the numbers, while in the large date, the 8 sits slightly lower. The 3 in the small date is more curved, and the overall number spacing is tighter. Next, you need to find out whether it is copper or zinc. You can do this with a simple scale. Copper pennies weigh about 3.11 grams, zinc pennies weigh around 2.5 grams. If you find a 1982 D small date penny that weighs around 3.1 grams, congratulations, you might have found one of the rarest Lincoln cents ever made. But don't rush to sell it just yet. You'll want to get it professionally authenticated by a coin grading service like PCGS or NGC. They can verify the metal content, the date style, and the authenticity of the coin. Now let's talk briefly about the other 1982 pennies. Many of them are still collectible, especially in uncirculated condition or with high grades. Some copper large date and small date coins in mint state condition can fetch between $5 and $50 depending on quality. Proof versions and special strike types are also of interest to collectors. Zinc coins from 1982 are usually worth face value unless they are in near perfect condition, but again, the standout is the 1982 D small date copper penny. It's one of those modern treasures that makes coin collecting so exciting. Imagine finding a coin worth thousands in your spare change. It's not just a dream, it has happened to real people. So check your pennies, especially those from 1982. We've covered the history, the composition change, the varieties, and the reason why this coin is so special. Let me quickly go over some current market prices as of this year. A standard 1982 D large date zinc penny is worth face value maybe 1 to 5 cents. A 1982 D large date copper penny in uncirculated condition could sell for $1 to $5. A 1982 small date copper penny from Philadelphia can go for $5 to $10 in good condition. But the elusive 1982 D small date copper penny, if authenticated, can range from $10,000 to over $20,000 depending on condition and grade. There are very few known examples and demand is strong among collectors. So again, weigh your coins, check the dates, look for that small date D mint mark combination, and get it tested if you think you found the rare one. And if you do find one, leave a comment below, because that would be an amazing story to share with the community. Where we uncover hidden treasures in your pocket change. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most fascinating and potentially valuable coins you might already have sitting in a jar somewhere, the 1984 Lincoln 1-cent penny. It's more than just a copper coin. In fact, under the right circumstances, this tiny piece of metal could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. So stick around, because today we're going to break down the History of the 1984 penny, its unique characteristics, what makes some of these coins so valuable, and how you can check if you have one worth serious cash. Let's get started. First, let's take a quick journey back in time. The Lincoln cent, also known as the Lincoln penny, has been in circulation since 1909. Introduced to commemorate the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, the design was created by Victor David Brenner and featured Lincoln's portrait on the obverse or front of the coin, making it the first U.S. coin to bear the image of a real person. Fast forward to 1984. The Lincoln cent had already undergone some changes over the years, but it still retained the classic portrait on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. The 1984 penny was struck by the United States Mint in three main facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Although they were produced in massive quantities, not all 1984 pennies are created equal, and that's where things get exciting in terms of composition. The 1984 Lincoln penny is mostly made of copper-plated zinc. Since mid-1982, the U.S. Mint had shifted from the older solid bronze planchets to the newer zinc core with a thin copper coating. This change was due to rising metal costs. So, unless you find an error, most 1984 pennies are 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. On the obverse of the coin, you'll see the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, liberty to his left, and the date 1984 to his right. If there's a mint mark, you'll find it just below the date. AD indicates Denver, S indicates San Francisco, and no mark typically means it was minted in Philadelphia. On the reverse, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Look closely, because there are certain reverse design varieties that can drastically impact the coin's value. Now here's where it gets interesting. While most 1984 Lincoln cents are only worth face value or slightly more in circulated condition, a small number of these coins contain errors or rare varieties that make them incredibly valuable to collectors. One of the most famous and sought-after errors is the 1984 double die penny. The 1984 double die obverse, or DDO, is one of the most dramatic doubling errors in the Lincoln Memorial series. This error occurs when the coin is struck by a die that has a misaligned image, causing certain elements on the coin to appear doubled. On the 1984 DDO penny, you'll notice strong doubling in Lincoln's ear, his eye, and the lettering, particularly in Liberty and the phrase "In God We Trust." This doubling is visible to the naked eye and is quite striking. If you happen to find a genuine 1984 double die penny, it could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on its condition and whether it's been graded by a professional coin grading service. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1984 penny? First, grab a magnifying glass or a coin microscope and examine the obverse side very closely. Look at Lincoln's ear and eye. Is there a clear and strong doubling effect? Does Liberty look like it's been stamped twice? Is "In God We Trust" slightly shadowed with a second impression? If so, you might be holding a rare 1984 double die penny. Next, check the coin's condition. Coins in higher grades, such as mint state or uncirculated, are worth significantly more. A worn-out circulated coin might fetch $50 to $100, while a pristine uncirculated example could sell for several hundred or even thousands of dollars at auction. Another tip: check for any unusual features. Some 1984 pennies have off-center strikes, die cracks, or repunched mint marks. Each of these minting anomalies can add value, especially if they're dramatic and well-defined. Let's talk money. How much is a 1984 penny really worth? In most cases, regular 1984 pennies in average circulated condition are only worth 1 cent, but the 1984 double die obverse penny changes everything. One example, graded MS67 red by PCGS, sold for over $6,000 at auction. That's right, a 1 cent coin sold for more than $6,000, and that's not even the only one. Coins in slightly lower grades can still go for $200, $300, or even $1,000, and the demand for these coins remains strong, with collectors constantly on the hunt for well-preserved and clearly doubled examples. If you think you have a valuable 1984 penny, your next step is to confirm its authenticity and condition. This usually means submitting the coin to a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC. These organizations will professionally evaluate the coin, assign it a grade, and authenticate any error varieties, such as the double die. Once your coin is graded, you can either keep it as a long-term investment or sell it through auction houses, online marketplaces, or coin dealers. Always be sure to get multiple opinions before selling and never rush into a quick sale, especially if the coin is rare. So there you have it. The 1984 Lincoln penny may look ordinary, but under the right circumstances, it can be a true treasure. From common change to collector's prize, this 1 cent coin has proven that value is often hidden in plain sight. Whether you're a seasoned collector or just getting started, take a moment to check your spare change. Who knows, you might already have a 1984 penny worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Today, we're talking about the 1987 Abraham Lincoln 1 cent penny, a coin that might be in your pocket or coin jar right now, and why it could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Let's explore its surprising story. The origins of the Lincoln cent. The Lincoln cent was first introduced in 1909 to commemorate the 100th birthday of President Abraham Lincoln. This made it the first circulating American coin to feature a real person. Prior to that, American coins showcased symbolic representations of liberty. Designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner, the coin has remained in circulation ever since, with many updates to its design, metal composition, and subtle mint details. What makes the 1987 penny special now? Fast forward to 1987. America was in the midst of economic shifts. The Cold War was near its end. Technology was on the rise. But in the world of coins, the Lincoln cent continued to quietly change hands across the country. At first glance, the 1987 penny may seem ordinary. It features Lincoln's bust on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Minted in massive numbers, over 11 billion pennies were struck that year. It was made primarily of copper-plated zinc, a change that began in the early 1980s due to rising copper costs. So why do some of these pennies now sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars? The answer lies in mint errors, condition, and collector demand. Understanding the SOMPOSITION. To understand the value of the 1987 penny, we need to examine what it's made of. By 1982, the U.S. Mint had stopped using solid bronze and began producing pennies using zinc with a thin copper coating. So the 1987 penny is a copper-plated zinc coin. It weighs around 2.5 grams. This means it has little melt value, but the numismatic value, the value to collectors, can be surprisingly high depending on certain factors. Mint locations and identification. There are three main types of 1987 Lincoln pennies, each defined by their mint mark. Pennies with a D were minted in Denver. Those with an S were produced in San Francisco as proof coins, and those without any letter were minted in Philadelphia. Regular circulation pennies from Philadelphia and Denver are usually worth face value unless they're in uncirculated or mint state condition. But proof coins from San Francisco and those with striking or minting errors can command much more. Valuable variants and mint errors. Now this is where things get interesting. Some 1987 pennies have errors that make them highly collectible. Double die errors are among the most sought after. This happens when the coin is struck more than once by the die in slightly misaligned positions. The result is a doubling of the design elements, like the lettering or Lincoln's profile. Another valuable error is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not properly aligned during minting. A 1987 penny that is 10% off-center might be worth a few dollars. But one that is 50% off-center and still shows a full date can be worth over $100. Clipped planchets are another error. That's when a portion of the coin is missing due to a mistake during the cutting process. These also attract collectors and can bring in a premium. Then there's the rare zinc rot or blistering. While this is technically a defect, some error collectors seek out extreme examples. High-grade coins and red designation. Next, we have the high-grade coins. A standard circulated 1987 penny is generally worth 1 cent. But a coin in mint state, especially one graded MS65 or higher, can fetch significantly more. Grading is a process done by professionals that evaluates a coin's condition on a scale of 1 to 70. The higher the number, the better the condition. Coins graded MS67 or higher are incredibly rare and often sell for premium prices. Also important is color designation. Copper coins can appear brown, red-brown, or red depending on how they have been stored. A red coin, which has maintained its original copper luster, is the most desirable. A red MS67 1987 penny can be worth several $100s. Some have even been auctioned for over $1,000 if the coin is pristine. 1987's proof pennies. Now let's talk about the San Francisco proof coins. These were specially made for collectors, using polished dies and special striking methods to produce a mirror-like finish. These were not intended for circulation. Most are still in their original sets. But if you find a 1987's proof penny with a cameo or deep cameo effect, and it's in perfect condition, it can be worth $15 to $50 or more depending on grading. Auction records and market trends of recent years. Some of the top-graded 1987 Lincoln pennies have reached incredible prices at auction. For example, one red MS 67 1987 penny sold for over $200. Proof versions with a perfect PR70 grade have fetched prices between $50 and $100. Error coins can go even higher. Some double die or extreme off-center errors have crossed the $1,000 mark, especially if the coin is in top condition and certified by a major grading service like PCGS or NGC. How to identify a valuable pen and why. So how do you know if your 1987 penny is worth more than face value? First, check the mint mark. Proofs come from San Francisco. Check for doubling on the date or lettering. Use a magnifying glass or loupe. Next, weigh the coin. While most 1987 pennies weigh 2.5 grams, a small number were mistakenly struck on leftover bronze planchets and may weigh around 3.1 grams. If you find one, that could be a jackpot. Also, examine the condition. The shinier and cleaner it is, with no scratches or discoloration, the better. Finally, consider getting the coin professionally graded if you think it might be rare. Slabbed coins, those sealed in plastic cases with certified grades, tend to sell for much higher on the collector market, where TO sell or BUY. If you believe you have a valuable 1987 penny, you can sell it on platforms like eBay, through coin dealers, or at coin shows. Make sure to research recent auction prices to get an idea of what collectors are currently paying. If you're looking to buy a rare 1987 penny, only purchase from trusted dealers or auctions with authentication. The 1987 Lincoln penny is more than just pocket change. While most are worth only a cent, some are hidden treasures that could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Whether it's a rare error, a pristine proof, or a high-grade red cent, these coins represent a fascinating corner of American numismatic history. So next time you get change at the store, don't ignore that penny. Give it a closer look. You might just be holding something far more valuable than you think. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to learn more about rare coins hiding in plain sight. Until next time, keep your eyes on your change.